We must search for what is truth.
You doubt me?
Seek truth.
What is truth? And what is God?
The first duty is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth.
Then here is the proof you seek.
You don't really want an answer to that question.
Welcome to the AxPx podcast, honest conversations about faith, doubt, disbelief, hope, and everything in between. I am your host, Sean DeRager. I want to thank all of you for listening to the show. We are wrapping up our series, Processing Belief Through Music. This is part 3, and I've just had a blast putting this series together, and I'm very honored to have interviewed TW Walsh, Derek Webb, and then now David Bazan. I do encourage you, if you haven't listened to the last 2 episodes, please do before you jump into this one. There's just some fantastic conversations, and I really do set up this series nicely into this discussion with David Bazan. If you're a fan of this podcast and you want to help support us, please check out our Patreon. It's only $1 a month, and you get an extra bonus podcast called the AxPx Diaries. It's a weekly podcast where I basically lay out kind of my thoughts and my struggles as I'm going through this faith journey. And it's something a little more personal and gives you a little more insight to what my life is like and my thought process on certain things. And I hope it's something that is valuable to everyone who listens. Now, the past couple episodes, I have given everyone an opportunity to call into a voicemail line. I'm going to play a few more voicemails in response to the question, how has music helped you process your faith, your doubt, or your disbelief? So I'm going to play that in just a second here. But if you want to use this voicemail line to drop in any questions at all, any comments about the show, that would be fantastic. The number is 951-723-5586. That'd be a fun way for us to converse and for me to hear your questions or comments and be able to respond. You can also drop me a line on Twitter at the AxPx. Let's jump into this week's show.
Hey, this is Liam O'Donnell from the Punks podcast. I'm answering this question. How has music helped me process my faith, doubt, disbelief? And honestly, music was probably one of the first places I encountered any of these things. Whether that was faith through, works by Christian bands, or even in popular music, some songs really sort of talked about some level of faith, but also even before that, disbelief in punk and hardcore. When Crass says Jesus died for his own sins, not mine, that really resonated with me too. So it was already a sort of conflict. And then as I got older, that kind of space in between where you really aren't sure what to think and you're more just looking for voices that inspire you or encourage you to be something more or to think something more. Music was also a source for that, maybe in more complicated ways, maybe from artists who didn't even know they were inspiring that kind of thought. But honestly, all that intellectual work came through music. But the place in which I think music moved me the most was actually in performance in a worship context. Even if I wasn't sure what I felt or what I believed in church, certain songs, especially in a church that wasn't bound to traditional church music, which, no offense, but it doesn't work for me. Even in those places, there was some music that really reached out and affected me a lot.
There's been a lot of times in my life that all different kinds of music has pushed me to different limits, and all different types of doubts have definitely come into my mind, and everything from classical music to just hard rock. But when it comes to doubt, it just seems hear the challenges from other people through the ages definitely boosts my faith. There's a book, it's called The Singer. It relates Christ as a singer in his life, and when I read it kind of helps me remember that through music is life, and through life is people's struggles and people's real life, and that helps me understand the process, doubt. And it helps me process to know other people are going through the same things I am.
This is Zari from the band Switchblade Saturdays. My take on it is I would definitely say it's more faith with music. The fact that it can bring you back to better times. It's almost therapy for the lost, I think. I think music speaks to the lost, and also just in general how it changes your opinion on everything. Like, you can preach through it, you can tell stories, and it literally brings people back from the dead. So I guess that's my opinion on it, is the fact that it shows faith and more apparent than ever, really, and it's universal language.
Hey Sean, Derek Hefner here. Just wanted to throw in some of my own perspective and how music has helped me sort through kind of my issues with the faith, especially since your guest, David Bazan, is one of the artists that has definitely spoke to that for me and kind of helped keep me honest through the whole process. You know, I've been listening to him since I was a Christian many, many years ago, and as I started undergoing the process of, deconstructing and then reconstructing my faith, and then to get to where I'm at now, which is currently kind of in a place where I can see some value in religion, but at the same time, I think that the literal interpretation of it is the source of a lot of problems. But something that his music has done for me is, there are a lot of specific verses or specific lines that kind of work in much the way like a Zen koan works. It kind of activates this cognitive dissonance that you have to face. It pulls that doubt out and makes you face it. My personal, one of my favorite songs of his is Magazine off of the Control album. And, the whole song lyrically is just kind of a touchstone for me whenever it comes to this stuff. But, particularly, the I feel the darkness growing stronger as you cram light down my throat. How does that work out for you in your holy quest to be above reproach? That right there, that is, it just touches on something that, you need to face the truth in that, rather than wear a mask, try to be above reproach. The whole time you're doing that, you're actually pushing people further away. And, then moving on to like Curse Your Branches, that whole album, the whole concept of, okay, God, I believe you exist, but this is why I have a problem with you. There's so many ways that his music has spoken to me. Thanks, Sean.
I didn't seek out David Bazan's music. David Bazan's music found me. When Page of the Lion hit the scene, I was knee-deep in whatever punk rock I could find. Laid-back acoustic music with a hint of melancholy wasn't on my musical agenda at the time.
So go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
After I graduated college, I'd been through my share of confusion and heartbreak. Dashboard Confessional had to run its course, and I was in a frustrated place between organized religion and my own budding personal beliefs. During that time, I heard the following lyric.
I hear that you don't change. How do you explain expect to keep up with the trends. You won't survive the information age unless you plan to change the truth to accommodate the brilliance of men. The brilliance of men.
With that lyric, David Bazan found me. It took some time, some conversations, and more life experiences for Pedro the Lion to move from a casual part of my listening arsenal to something deeper and more profound. I'd listen to his albums and discuss some of his more poignant Christian-tinged lyrics with friends over coffee at the local coffee shop. Then, Control hit.
This is how we multiply. Pity that it's not my wife. The friction and skin, the trembling side. This is how the bodies move, with everything that we could lose.
In this small Tulsa coffee shop across the street from Oral Roberts University, conversations turned to this Christian album with salty language and a story about a man's sexual affair spiraling into inevitably violent consequences. Some were offended, some were intrigued. One even went so far to call David Bazan a prophet. I was simply taken with the raw honesty on display on this album. A few years later, I became an atheist. My brother-in-law died in October of 2006. While his father stood in front of a church interceding for his son's safe return back to God, Jake had found solace in alcohol, and one night he had one too many. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. As his body surrendered his spirit, I saw my once joyful wife, sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and father-in-law reduced to complete devastation and horror. What kind of a God would do this to his beloved followers? I saw a family completely destroyed. I was done with God. This struggle stayed inside me as I lived a double life, a Christian on Sundays and around my family, but inside an angry unbeliever, alone with my thoughts. David Bazan found me again.
All fallen leaves should curse their branches for not letting them decide where they should fall, and not letting them refuse to fall at all.
In between 2006 and 2009, Bazan had come forward with his doubts about Christianity, and his album Curse Your Branches chronicled his fall out of faith. I didn't know his personal story, but I read an interview with him that turned my world upside down. I didn't feel so alone anymore. Someone else was going through the exact same doubts and frustrations I had been going through for the past few years. It was cathartic and it was moving. I've since moved from atheism to more of a spiritual yet agnostic viewpoint, but Bazan's music continues to feed my soul with each new album. His album Care is out right now, and I recently had the opportunity to talk to David Bazan about his new album and his journey.
She almost can't spit out the question. Can men and women not be friends?
Well, after long last and me chasing down his manager like a crazy person, David Bazan joins me here on the AxPx podcast. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Sean. Thank you.
First of all, I just got to congratulate you on the album Care. It's awesome. This has been a great year for music. TW Walsh with a new record, you with a new record, and John Moreland with a new record, and then your upcoming side project, Low Tom.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty damn good year for music, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, there's a lot of music out right now. A lot of really big bands with new records, Spoon and Flaming Lips and Granddaddy, and there's a lot happening. The new Kendrick Lamar record is insane.
Oh man, I know, right? In my conversation with Derek Webb, him and I talked about a moment when he was at an airport getting ready to board a plane, and he was listening to your live acoustic of Oblivion, which you guys put out as a kind of Kickstarter bonus for everyone who financed the documentary that's going to be finished here.
Hello again, Oblivion. Can you find the frequency while the specters hover whispering?
He tweeted out that it moved him to tears, like, thanks a lot for making me cry in a public airport kind of tweet. And I thought that was really funny, especially coming from Derek Webb. And personally, your music and John Moreland, for some reason, you guys can reduce me to a bawling plate of blubber with some of your songs. And it doesn't happen often, but for some reason, you guys can tap into a certain, just a certain level of the struggle, I guess, that some of us go through. What's your initial reaction when people let you know that they're like moved like that to your songs? I know you tweeted back, sorry,
Well, I mean, I'm moved by music that way. Certain songs will just kind of hit me. And it doesn't even have to be music that I like all the way. I remember one time, I think I was in Oklahoma. I had just done playing a house show in Oklahoma City the day before, and I stopped in this little diner to have some breakfast, and some song, and I have never sought it out, but a song came on the radio or whatever, the speakers at the restaurant, that was a country song that they were trying to make you think that this guy was lamenting seeing his girl with somebody else, and how it was kind of hard for him to see his girl with somebody else.
Look at the two of you dancing that way, lost in the moment and each other's face. So much in love, you're alone in this place, like there's nobody else in the world.
And then the chorus kicks in, and they've set the stage pretty good, and you realize that he's talking about his daughter, and that she's like grown up and maybe getting married or something, I don't know. And like for some reason it just struck me, and like I sat there I was sitting there and I realized, oh no, like this is happening. Like I'm in a kind of a small diner, and I'm falling apart right now. And so I thought I stood up pretty quick, and I went to the bathroom. Two benefits to that in my mind. One being, people aren't going to see me lose my shit. And then two, I'll probably be able to escape the song, hearing any more of the song, because that might bring some relief too. If I had to hear it more, it might, I might go further down that road.
Right.
So I get to the bathroom, and like the song is so loud in the bathroom. It's a single bathroom. And so I'm just like in jail with this song like blaring in my face. Basically, it's like a low ceiling, and they've got like one of those little speakers in the ceiling, and it's just pounding in there. And so I just lost it totally. It tapped into some anxiety or grief or something that I was feeling. And I have music is just it's a powerful thing. And so it doesn't strike me that it means that I write particularly emotional songs, or that the songs are even good if they touch people that way. Because this wasn't a song that I enjoyed. As the craft of it was good enough to bring me to that place, but there were a lot of aesthetic choices. All of the aesthetic choices were offensive, to me. So my takeaway is that what I hope I'm doing is just that I'm representing something real that is happening with me, that I'm representing something real.
Yeah.
And so to me, that means that people who find themselves even momentarily in the same headspace or facing a similar set of emotions, or even if just a set of emotions that are evoked by the song that I didn't have any intention of evoking, you know, that's how music works too.
Yeah.
That it touches something individually that the artist might have no idea was even a part of that thing. So I'm grateful to be a part of the conversation, that there are people who I respect who hear my tunes and feel something or it evokes something true for them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think that all music is kind of capable of that. And that we are all just like these idiosyncratic collections of trauma that get unlocked occasionally by a song, you know. And I guess too, like I kind of hover around that stuff. Like I guess I'm working out my own trauma a little bit more than maybe some other songwriters are. So maybe I'm hovering around the themes that are more likely to hit people in that way.
Right.
That's not a positive or a negative. I don't think that's just what I tend to do.
I do the same thing. My wife and I are always struggling with we were fighting over the radio, or I guess our iPhones now, trying to pick something, because I'll tend to lean more towards the melancholy, stuff like that, and she leans more towards more upbeat, you know, something that she can dance to, something like that. So definitely, I'm definitely the same way.
You should put on Fascination Street by The Cure sometime, because you can definitely dance to that.
Nice.
And it'll scratch the melancholy itch too.
Well, I mean, that's why your new album is great, because there's a little bit of both in that album.
That's true.
You know, but she immediately recognized your voice, and she went, "Oh no, not this guy."
Yeah, not him. He's so sad.
I was like more of a casual fan of Page of the Lion all the way back to the Tooth and Nail days. I know friends who loved Page of the Lion. We're always talking about your music. But then you released the album Control, and that album knocked me on my ass a little bit, because I was working in the Christian music industry at the time, and then seeing like the controversy kind of boil over about that album and the honest language you were using in it. And then when I saw you at Cornerstone that year, I think it was that year, and you made some candid remark about you had to change certain lyrics to certain songs.
Was it? I was on the main stage playing that year.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't. My comment might have been too vague, as my comments often are. I chose not to use, you know, I guess what people would say were the off-color words, shit, come, fuck. On both times I played the main stage at Cornerstone, I censored myself.
Okay.
The thinking was, and I guess I stayed consistent with this thought, because the next year after our two main stage appearances, we played in Encore 1, a smaller midnight show, you know. So we played on the main stage, where there are families who camp out with their kids all day to see whatever's on the main stage.
Gotcha.
And so I just thought, you know, there are my fans here who have walked over from the other, you know, section of the festival, but there's a lot of these other people here, and I think that I can get my, you know, if my concern about being censored is that somehow the point won't come across, I thought that was not a concern.
Okay.
I thought the point is coming across the whole time I'm singing, because I just am about what I'm about. And so it didn't strike me that I was somehow being muzzled because I couldn't say shit or come.
Okay.
I think that people, you know, the song Indian Summer really makes its point regardless of saying the word come.
Right. Right.
So that was my thinking there. And I'm also curious, I got some of the controversy. I mean, there were people who talked to me at shows every night, but what did it seem like? But I never get to be hip to what actually is happening.
I mean, I was working for a band. They're called Pillar, and they were touring around with like Skillet and Tate, and all the mainstream Christian guys, right? So they weren't really listening to the music I was listening to. So I was always, I don't know if it was online or certain people I talked to or other youth pastors that I would talk to at these shows. I mean, one time I got a youth pastor mad at me because I was wearing a Cinderella t-shirt. So,
that's funny. Right.
So kind of hearing that kind of stuff. And then I think there were some articles, maybe stating, I don't think it was anything big. I mean, I wasn't paying attention because at the time, like, I was working in the Christian music industry, but I was like not listening to Christian music.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a funny scene because you get to some place where there's like maybe a dozen youth pastors or whatever, and they all have different levels of, they all have different degrees to which they try to prevent their students from listening to secular music, basically. And I really lucked out because in high school, my youth pastor, when somebody asked him about secular music, he just said, "Christian music sucks." Like, I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah.
Like he liked Phil Keaggy and like a couple of other people, but he's like, by and large, like, there's nothing good to listen to. So why would I tell you guys to do that? Like, just seek out things that you connect with, And that was in an Assemblies of God Pentecostal, church. I just lucked out and had a remarkably sane and helpful youth pastor. But I know that culturally, if you walk into a situation like, where there's a bunch of people there's going to be people who are mad. I played a show in Nashville. Maybe it was after Control or Achilles Heel. And during the Q&A, a guy who was maybe the buyer at a local Christian bookstore, the music buyer, he got mad at me and he said, "You should have given us, the public some indication that you're no longer a Christian, because here I am buying your records for the store thinking that you're a Christian band. He's putting this on me." And then a customer comes up to me and is really mad because you say this foul language on your record. And so I understand where some of that stuff's coming from, and I understand the flavor that it, that it kind of takes on. And it's funny.
Yeah, the self-imposed stuff is what I find really ironic in a way, how people put Christian art, quote unquote Christian artists, right up on a pedestal. I mean, for a while, I remember there was a Christian bookstore that was selling U2 albums. You know what I mean? Because someone must have, there's some vague, Christian references here. Let's buy the music for their store.
There's a really strong undercurrent there was when I was growing up, a strong undercurrent of Christians, especially sort of progressive Christians, trying to kind of claim U2 as a Christian band. And I understood what they meant, but I always thought there was something dishonest or kind of unnecessarily tribal about that. Like, they're ours kind of thing. Like, they speak for us or whatever. And I just think, like, I don't know. It seems tribal in a funny way. But at the same time, like, that whole world is just a mix of different sort of purity sort of codes. I went to try to buy a Scattered Few record in Phoenix when I was a kid called Sin Disease, and the bookstore person, the person in charge of the music section, informed me that they don't carry their records because the last time they came to Phoenix, they played in a bar. I think it was 11. And I remember leaving there thinking, like, I don't really have an argument for why I think that guy's a prick and wrong, but I just felt it in my bones, just like, that's like the Footloose dude or something. Like, it's just, it's puritanical, authoritarian, just, nonsense that finds its way into the music the Christian music industry. Another artifact, I got told when I tried to play somebody Petra when I was a kid that it sounded to them like the message was getting lost in the music. And I also had that same kind of bone deep feeling of like, ugh, this person is not really after the same thing. Is he tribal and dishonest and fearful?
I mean, I even had someone at one point in this Tulsa, Oklahoma coffee shop, and we were talking about your music and everything, and he came up and said, he goes, "Oh, David Bazan's a prophet."
Oh boy!
And I was like, "Oh my God!" And as soon as I saw, the trajectory of your career and Curse Your Branches came out, I always think about that guy. I wonder what direction he thought your prophethood or whatever took a turn for. But
yeah.
But I mean, all this to ask you basically, like, so you've wrestled with kind of being on this Christian pedestal and everything, and it's not your fault. That's the funny thing about it. But when you began working through your own personal doubt as you were closing down Praise of the Lion and starting to do your solo writing, like, how did that affect your songwriting? Because when I was speaking with TW Walsh, he said that the Page of the Lion stuff was very much story driven. But you started getting a little more autobiographical, moving into your solo stuff. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. Yeah, I think that Pedro stuff is majority kind of fiction, character driven, and Bazan stuff is majority. I think that basically I think I learned how to let bits of autobiography into the songs without them needing to be purely autobiographical. Whereas with Pedro, I just tended to include fewer autobiographical details, but I always tend to say this, and I feel it, that, it's assumed that autobiography is more personal than fiction or character-driven stuff. And I just don't think that that's the case. I think that sometimes there are things that if you were only expressing your autobiography, there are aspects of your thoughts and your feelings about the world and that just would not get represented because they're not a part of the happenstance of your life. And so I think after Pedro, I learned to basically continue to write fiction in a way, but including a lot more autobiographical details in it, so that I'm just thinking if I can think of an example. Cold Beer and Cigarettes was the first one where I really kind of became comfortable messing with that, with the line between fiction and autobiography, and realizing that I didn't have to, that I could include autobiographical details or thoughts feelings that I had that are flowing from me in a narrative about a character that isn't me. And that those two things that I can sort of like freely just do that. And so that was the first time I did it. And I think that I've been continually just messing with it, or not even messing with it. It's just that set of obstacles just went away. And I don't even think about it now. I just, every song, everything that I'm writing is just both fiction and autobiography can live together in a way that it doesn't, I don't perceive that big of a difference when I'm doing it. I'm just trying to communicate something true. That's what I'm trying to, that's what you're trying to do, is to communicate something that feels representative of the feeling that you have, that you're trying to get across.
Well, I mean, I think anyone who was kind of going through wrestling with their own personal faith at the time, like when Curse Your Branches came out, I'm 39, so a lot of people around that time came out, and then my circles, because I moved away from Tulsa, and we were all fans and loved your music, and like one by one, like your album came out, and one by one, I feel like we started to actually be more bold, I guess, and the things that we talked about and the ideas that we pursued and would deconstruct.
Whoa.
But I was here in California, they were spread around, and it was almost a way, like when that album came out, that I didn't feel so alone, because it was all on our own too. I had some personal things that I was wrestling with. So it's pretty crazy that album, and then through some interviews I read and everything, I was like, I got to the realization that it's okay to question the stuff. Like, why am I just, trying to make everything fit?
Right.
Why don't I just embrace these questions? And that kind of started me down the path of being more bold about my questions. I'm sure I lost a lot of Facebook friends, and went through kind of the in one of my other podcasts we talk about kind of when you lose your faith, it's kind of there's a grief process. So I went through all the 5 steps. I think there's 5 steps of grief.
Of grieving, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure you run into a lot of these people because you do the home shows, you do concerts, and how do you feel like when different people are coming up to you and tell you that your music kind of helped them get through a tough time or actually made them question their beliefs? Like, how do you answer that question? But still, I'm sure you get a lot. Can you still bring it down to a personal level with them? I should ask first, does this happen quite a bit?
Yeah, enough where I have experience with it. I tend to, there's a feeling of loss that because I experienced, a pretty dramatic shift in my thinking about Christianity. As of course we're talking about that, but the grief that you're talking about, I experienced that grief and the loss and the kind of ongoing negotiation with people in your life and those things. It's hard. It's something that, so when people describe that they've experienced that for any reason at all, my heart goes out to them, and I want, I have the desire for them to be comforted, but at the same time, I understand the freedom of, thinking for yourself and how you just wouldn't go back to that other thing. And so I'm glad in that moment. And I think that, that record, like anything, but that record is it's pretty obsessed about this one thing. And it's a unique record in that way. There are a lot of records about God, and Christian records at that, about the Christian God and dealing with the themes of that surround the Christian God. But it's not that, it's a really uncommon thing. I've realized. And so, but I also don't believe that it has the power to cause anybody to, lose their faith who if having not heard that record, they would go through the rest of their life with that faith intact. There are those of us who, a potent set of ideas that are sort of disruptive to the status quo of our lives. There are some of us who are just sort of susceptible to that because we have some amount of distrust of the status quo or I don't know what, like, people would have said of me that, I wondered if people that were older than me saw my trajectory, when I was younger, because I've always been somebody who was pushing at the what seems to me the asinine sort of ways that Christianity would do things in the churches that I grew up in, and the way that people would act and the values that won out over and over again. Like, I was always grinding against that stuff. And now it seems to me that it was inevitable that I was going to grind out of it, because now I have a view on what it is that I think there was no way for me to it was just a matter of time, you know. I mean, some of my buddies I've talked to, and they were like, look, I put that record on and I just couldn't listen to it anymore. Like, it just put me in a weird place. And then, you know, and so I know that that's a thing too. Like, my music isn't for everybody. You know, there are some people who, if their friend made them sit and listen to one of my records all the way through, that it would really, you know, it could really like, you know, force them to think about a bunch of stuff that they're just not ready to think about, or I don't know. Everybody's in a different spot, and we all have to sort of hold our shit together in spite of it not being together for certain lengths of time. And so transitions, especially from Christian to non-Christian, evangelical or otherwise, there's never a good time for them, you know.
Does this songwriting and does your kind of dialogues with people you meet on the road, do you feel it's kind of for you personally, something to kind of help you continue working through this everything? Because there's never, I don't see like an end to my questions or an end to my doubts. I have faith in different things, but I'm hopeful that I'm trying to be optimistic, where I'm going to find, you know, that faith, or I am going to find God.
Right.
If you're not doing this music, you know, how would you be processing this? You know what I mean? Like, is music the catalyst that helps you process everything?
Well, I process things verbally, primarily, and, but I've been able to express things through music that I don't have the ability to do that in any other part of my life, or even verbally. You know, you can have discussions with people all day long, but there's something about when you make music, there's a feeling, that intangible sort of feeling that goes along with it, and you can connect thoughts and feeling together in a way that is, I don't know, you can convey a lot in 3 minutes, where 3 minutes of conversation you'd never ever, you know, or 30 minutes, you know, you just couldn't get to that same thing. So I do rely on music for that to some degree. I think subconsciously, from It's Hard to Find a Friend on, I just kind of realized that, and I'm saying It's Hard to Find a Friend because that's the record that, it was the kind of the moment where I became myself, I feel like, or like the sort of the public version of myself. That's not the right way to say it. I just matured. It was a moment of maturity. And so since then, songwriting, I think I've just unconsciously known that, you know, I can get at some big issues here, or I can sort of calm some pretty grouchy, feelings, this way. And so then when Branches, you know, came along, that record I wrote reluctantly in a way, up to a certain point. I wanted to write about other things, not about religion anymore, not about drinking, not about marriage, but those were the songs that were coming out, you know. And I honestly thought, my body was knowing what it was doing, but my brain was still hoping that I was going to be going a different direction. I thought, okay, this will be an EP. And then I had like 6 songs, and, you know, I was writing more, and I thought, it's a record, man. Like, and you actually enjoy playing these songs, so you need to get down with it. And so then I turned a corner and realized, okay, I can use this, you know, songwriting mull some of this stuff over in a way that will be satisfying. And it turned out that I did do that, and then I got to play those songs, a couple hundred times, many of them over the next couple years. And that was therapeutic. The songs themselves changed for me. I don't know if from the first time that you heard some of those songs till now, if because your perspective about who, what God is might be different, your perspective on the record changes as to what is even being said.
It happens with most of your records too. I have 3 kids, so I can't sit and process a full album anymore. Right. I kind of do it in parts, and I think when Cursor Branches came out, I had 1 kid. I got 3 now, and
nice work.
Yeah, I'm done. No more. But every time I put on your albums, and I do have a new perspective, and that's what's great, I think, about how you do your songwriting, is it's not cut and dry. This is exactly what this song is. There's different ways to approach each song, and I think that's what good writing does. I mean, I think there's a song on Strange Negotiations. I think, is it the last song?
Won't Let Go?
Oh my God, man.
When you get this message, I'll be high above the earth, thinking about the promises that I keep.
When I first heard that song, let's see, I think I had 2 kids then, and that song was great, man. I was traveling a lot. I was commuting a lot for my job, and that touched that, that nerve in me as a father and a husband, in many ways. And I think when I first heard it, man, I just tears coming down my eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's, I think the rest of my drive home, I can't remember where I was. I think it was dark. I put that song on repeat and I listened to it over and over and over again all the way home.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That one, the feeling of that recording, was a really high point for me on that record. It was kind of a subtle thing, and maybe I don't know what I sometimes forget that song's on the end of the record. But then when I get there, I just remember it was just a happy little accident. A record that besides that song is so muscular and kind of thumping, and then that one has like a, I don't know, spooky but easy kind of feel to it. Yeah. So I'm glad that you had a moment with that song.
Oh man, yeah,
I feel like I did too.
Yeah, it's by far one of my favorite songs for sure. Like it's one I always go back to. With all this in your dialogues with people, and do you still make an effort to kind of be in dialogue with communities and individuals of faith? Like, is that something you search out, or is it something that finds you? And is that a positive or a negative?
I don't think I could avoid it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, my family, on both my parents and my wife's family and everybody around me is Christian, and then on tour and friends too here in town. But I have a lot of friends who are also not Christian. But yeah, and then on the road, because of the songs that I've sung in the past, and also, I just run into it everywhere, and I haven't had to be intentional about it to seek it out, I guess. And I don't know there's a culture shock to some of it that I always forget is going to be there. I always forget that I'm moving. My views are evolving, and every now and again you run into people in that world, especially whose views are either not evolving, or now recently we've seen like a de-evolution. So I guess I'm saying that to say that I don't know if I would seek that out.
Right.
I'm always surprised when I find that, and it always hurts a little.
Do you run into people, like other people from other kind of versions of Christianity, say more Episcopalian, that type of stuff, that are more open, more liberal, form of Christianity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, at my shows, the majority of people that are at my shows have already, they're just cool. They're people who are, the friendliest atheists and Christians and everything in between are the least dogmatic, the least, combative. Like in my experience, I don't know, I'm not there, at the bar afterward all the time, seeing what kind of conversations take place. But, so I've been lucky that I get to interact with a really positive element of a sort of a self-selecting group of people,
Right.
I just really want Christianity to go away in some ways. And so, I'm trying to think, like, if the heat of it kind of died down at some point, that's where my concern really lies at this point, is I just want wholeness and healing for the people in that movement. And right now, all of the sanest people are being held hostage by something I dare not describe, because it's not nice and it's scary. And it's a majority, a majority of white Christians, are courting Antichrist, and so if that were to die down and everything were kind of to go back to some sort of normal and Christianity just sort of shrunk from public life, I don't know that I would seek it out. I feel like in terms of trying to connect with those voices, I think I would still have plenty of people in my life who represent that, and that seems appropriate. But I honestly feel like that the influence of Christianity in public is so damaging, so destructive, that I just hope that I hope it really shrinks from public life.
Yeah.
I feel like we and they have polluted enough, and they need to go back to the drawing board, to their prayer closet, and just fucking stay there for a little while.
Yes, please. In the documentary, there's like a 5-minute kind of trailer, right, for this documentary that they're finishing up.
Yeah.
And I really connected when you were talking about, you'd like to be around your family more. And I toured when I was single. I had single, and I waited tables when I was home from tour. I couldn't imagine touring right now, or trying to book those tours. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and this is their job, and they tour a lot. And you were saying, you just wanted to try to be around more. And I'm wondering if that's a narrative that the documentary explores. But is this something that you have begun working towards, like touring less, but having it not, impact your family too much?
Yeah. I have, for about 3 years now, I've been working toward it. And it's slow going. I had some ups and downs, sort of misplaced investment for a minute. And, in 2014, my son was getting ready to turn 5, and I realized that I had been gone for 2 years and maybe 7 or 8 months of his life, more than half. And, it kind of took the wind out of me. And so I got on the horn with Bob, and we just set about to try to figure out how to sort of shift the how to shift things around a bit to try to get me home a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So 2015, I wasn't home I didn't really get to lay off too much. I brought another guy out, and we were attempting to kind of do something. And then 2016, similarly, it just first new record in years came out, and I was wanting to lay low, but I just didn't have the ability to. We needed the dough. We were going to be short, and so
right.
Both years, I think maybe I shaved like 15 days off. I haven't done the math.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 years really fucked me up, to tell you the truth. By the end of 16, I've been pretty low in general. I'm kind of climbing my way back out. Making Care was a big part of that. Sort of at my lowest point ever, I just realized basically at the end of 2016, I made a deal with myself that was just like, you can't wait for it to happen. You just have to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You have to demand this many days and no more. And then just and then you just have to figure it out. And so the first of the year came around, and I was looking down the barrel of the year and just realized there's no income coming from anywhere. The only thing that I have is touring.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, at that time especially, I couldn't even entertain the idea of going out. I was so burned out, and I had really hit kind of I had hit bottom, honestly, just sort of emotionally. And so I realized, well, I have to do what I can control. There's not a lot that I have control of in this situation, but so I figured, well, the only thing that I know how to do that can sort of is a big ticket thing that can potentially make some money, is to make a record.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And, I'm really glad I did. I don't know. It started me back in the right direction, but it's been a climb.
Yeah.
And, trying to figure out how to make that shift where I'm staying home more, but able to, where we don't have to just like slash. I mean, we already don't eat out, or, we drive old cars, like, so we're, just trying to figure out how to not disrupt the way that, the kids' lives are going at the moment, the activities that they're involved in, all that stuff, but still switch it up, enough to, it's been a trick, honestly. And one that I haven't fully figured out yet, but, I'm really working on it. I guess to finish that up, I've shown to myself that I'm willing to work hard, for the privilege of doing this job,
mm-hmm.
And to do everything that I can to earn it. I tour more than, more than most. And it's not glamorous, it's just, you got to gut it out. But I've been trying to find ways to work smarter, because, I couldn't keep up what I was doing before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in look my kids in the eye and know that I could have maybe done something to be a part of their lives a little bit more, but I just was too lazy to do it.
It's funny because when I think about what you do in touring and everything, and I'm like, he's out there, he gets to work through all this shit he's dealing with, faith-wise and doubt-wise, and with all these people, but then but then you look at the other hand, it's like, well, you're sacrificing time with your own family and the people in your community, you know what I mean, who really know you. So it's like it's a give or take, you know.
Well, and you basically, to live on the road half the time is to forfeit community.
Yeah.
And part of the trick was, one of the things that was really getting me down is that there was a built-in community of being on the road for the most part for the whole time that I've been doing this. Mm-hmm. And that made the what you give up at home community-wise easier to deal with, because you sort of have this tight-knit kind of group of people that, you know, you're sharing all these experiences with. And that was really great. But the last few years have been doing that alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't gain anything on the tour side. You have these sort of, you know, sweet interactions with strangers or acquaintances too, and friends. I get to see friends.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as having friends where you live and cultivating those relationships. And when you're gone half the time, like, you just don't get asked to stuff the same way. You just have to say no all the time. And that's something that, you know, in the first couple of years you can figure it out. But, you know, 17 years in, 18, 19, geez, I guess it'll be 20 years next year of touring.
That's ridiculous.
It doesn't, that's something that doesn't, you have to work really hard and be lucky also to work it out. And not having like church or something like that, which is a little bit of a built-in thing. You have to work extra hard for it. And, if you take your eye off the ball for a minute, suddenly you just realize, shit, you know, this is my native spot is behind the wheel of this car alone. Sometimes I see my family, and, you know, I used to have close friends.
Right.
You know,
the nomadic life of a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think that it's really sustainable. You don't see a lot of people just straight up solo. You know, all the time like that. And the ones who you do see, you know, they're crazy. They're a little nuts.
Like we've talked about, you do run into people who, you know, are in need for someone to talk to who's gone through it, and I run into that every now and then, even with this show. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting to question their faith or their worldview, and what have you learned along the way with your own personal journey?
In my opinion, you know, fear is a thing that people run into, and it's my opinion that the things that cause that fear it's other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that fear is coming from the institutions in our lives and the people who buy into that, and the threat that it is to the kind of the little social order wherever we're kind of living, when we suggest that we sort of hold a different view than the norm. And in this situation, I'm thinking of people who are sort of socked in, you know, who go to church from Christian family, having these thoughts and things. That's a really difficult thing. The transition is tough. I would say, so I would say journal about it, but you got to be really, it just depends on how dangerous of a situation you're in terms of abuse. No, I'm not saying like violent, like somebody's going to kick your ass because you stop being a Christian, but there's the risk of abuse.
Yeah, there's psychological abuse and
trauma that, you know, abandonment and different things. So it's something to be thoughtful about. I guess the main thing is that you're not alone. Millions, billions of people have suffered that sort of loneliness of being a part of a tribe of people that you just don't connect with, or that you doubt the basic truth claims of their their system, but you can't say anything about it. And that's just it's a heavy situation. And, you're not bad for thinking those things. There's nothing wrong with you, in that way. That the people who want you to be afraid, some of them have the same thoughts and they just can't admit it,
Right.
I think that's just the thing is understanding like the intensity of the pressure cooker, the social pressure cooker that Christianity, Protestant Christianity, whatever your religious, background is, whatever the religious community is, but namely evangelical Christianity at this point in history, it wasn't always this way.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a normal version of. This is leaning toward the worst aspects of institutional Christianity, and it's okay to. I basically just like you gotta trust your feelings about stuff like that. If your intuition says like, don't keep going this direction, you should listen, and talk to somebody about it. If you can find somebody who's safe to talk to,
mm-hmm.
So, and I'm talking about it in kind of a worst case scenario, and I guess that's the person who I'm most worried about. I'm most concerned about. For a lot of people, it's going to be a lot easier than what I'm describing, but there are some people who are just in a spot where they're particularly lonely, but and they have nobody to talk to or nobody to express this stuff.
And that was my biggest thing was the communication. I would try to talk to my wife about it, and it would just turn into an argument because we were on completely different wavelengths with this stuff. And she was unfortunately. I mean, she's my best friend, but unfortunately, at that time, like I could not talk to her about that.
Talk about that. How that's an important. I mean, everybody's transition is going to be different because of all those factors. But what was how long did it take before there was a little bit of peace?
Man, it was a good couple of years because I started this podcast up to kind of at least get my voice out there and process my way of processing this stuff.
Yeah.
And then a buddy of mine that I knew him from a Christian band that I'd worked with. He was going through the same stuff, so him and I connected. He had read a lot more than me. He'd actually read Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, stuff like that. And so he was someone that I can call, email, chat. We can always talk to. And I worked with him on the show when I was getting this started. But for my wife, it was. I would not want to go to church. I did not want. I was very combative towards any religious talk, and then we have kids, and hear them. How are we gonna raise these kids up? And I feel like we've gone through a lot, and we're at a really good spot. And I'm gonna be talking with her. I mean, I know I want to share our story for a future episode for sure. But I think we finally got to a point now. Where we got to a point where it was. She says, as long as you're seeking truth, as long as you love our kids, as long as she said, as long as you love me, like those are the things that matter. And as long as you're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as long as you're just not going to full on stop. I'm an atheist and I don't believe in any of this bullshit. I'm still very open to going to church with her and stuff. And
And those are all negotiations that, I mean, if you're married, for instance, it can be, really tricky. Mm-hmm. You both go to church, and that, I'm aware of marriages that did not withstand that. I'm so glad to hear, and I think that hearing specifics of people's experience can sort of remind people of like, yeah, you have to sort of figure this stuff out. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. It's not just a decision that you come to. And also, I say decision, if somebody is wrestling with this stuff, it's not their fault. They didn't do that on purpose. They didn't have this, they didn't, and the notion that some people might suggest, well, if you just would stay away from any of that stuff, then you wouldn't have ever. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
There is just data coming at us all the time, and our brains, for our own safety, are attempting to process all of the value claims that are coming in constantly. And so it's helpful to understand, I think, that this isn't something that anybody necessarily chooses. There's just data in the world, and we respond to it.
I wish I could be ignorant to certain things. It's like, I wish I could just turn that off at sometimes when it causes a lot of stress and fractures relationships. It's like, I wish I was not wired this way, but I was wired to pick at the scab,
yeah,
just pick away and a lot like you, just dig deeper into the matter and not take someone's word for it, But
well, and I really like what you're saying, that your wife, what her message was, which was, it's indicative of this thing that when there is a shift like that, and my relationship with my wife too, it causes you to really evaluate what is a deal breaker. And I think a lot of people think that if my spouse stops believing in God, that is a deal breaker. But then when it happens, you realize that no, it's not. It's not a deal breaker. And it only ever tends to be a deal breaker when the person's community insists that is the case too. You know what I mean? That's where, because it's hard to look to it really doesn't make any sense to, if you're in a relatively healthy relationship and you love the other person and you're seeing the anguish of this transition, how would you, if that is being shared, I guess that's one thing that, if you, my wife, what I was going through was visible. It was upsetting to me. And she knew that there was a struggle in it. And so it's just hard for me to, I just want to encourage people that, things that you think are deal breakers, when you get there, you realize that you love this person, and the deal breaker would be if they stopped loving you, or if they, but like you're saying, shy of like, and the other thing is it may be sort of not a norm yet that people quit Christianity so that they can be better people. Cause that is something that's something my dad said to me, is he was like, it's just a little hard to process because usually people stop believing in Christianity because they want to leave their wife or something. Or they want to justify doing hard drugs on a regular basis or something. And he said, I feel like that you're leaving this because you genuinely want to be better than you are. And so that's a good point that your wife implies too, is that as long as you're seeking truth, like if you left this and because you wanted to start doing a bunch of things that I'm uncomfortable with, that would be a different situation. And that's what we're used to associating with leaving Christianity. Right.
I mean, no cocaine or orgies were on the agenda.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
But that's a different thing and maybe that was never the main reason why people left Christianity. But now I think that there maybe is an uptick in people who are like, I'm down with the values of a lot of the values that I got from Christianity, but the way that they're applied, or the other values that sort of coexist within that system of thinking, I just can't abide by. And so I want to do something that sort of transcends what the Christianity that I came from is about, or willing to be about, or whatever. But so those are really to me, the answer to the original question that you said, what advice would you give? Seek out people talking about this. If you're not ready to talk about it with somebody, or there isn't anybody to talk about, there are podcasts like this one that you just listened to. You're already doing it. But like the more it can be brought to sort of human scale, the problem, and the more that, you know, and I'm not saying like, oh, everything's going to be fine, because, you know, that's just not, there might be people in your life who just can't deal with it, and you lose important relationships because of it. I hope that's not the case, but, you know, the more people's stories that you can seek out, the more you can get around people who eventually are willing and interested in hearing your story. If you're timid about it, or you feel like you need time before coming out to anybody about whatever it is, but we're talking about Christianity right now. But if you're having these doubts, it is coming out. I mean, you have to admit this shit to somebody at some point, or else it'll eat you up inside.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, that if this has kind of blossomed inside your brain, you just start working on a plan to confide in somebody to get it out. Even if it's, you know, maybe there's anonymous things that you can do where you call up a hotline or something, you know, and just talking about it is important. These are really heavy feelings, and they're like core ideas for a lot of us, especially if you grew up Christian. And so get ready for some grief. As you've already talked about, Sean.
But the funny thing is, I didn't, and I've said this before on the show, like I didn't realize what I was going through. And my whole journey sparked from losing my brother-in-law in a car accident. And,
oh man.
And so I'd already gone through that grief, and here I was again a couple years later, just having those feelings coming up again and not really knowing how to process them.
Yeah.
So I think once I realized what was going on, that was when a lot of the anger went away, because I was one of those angry guys on Facebook. And when brought up religion, I'm zeroing in on you, you know. And
oh, I love that, man. That's such a sensitive place to be in.
Oh my God. But once I realized what was going on, I'm in the anger phase. That was when I can go through that and move forward into something healthy. And my wife and I, like, we don't believe the same exact things, but we have some really great conversations.
That's
and
amazing.
We're able to talk about it. And she's had some frustrations with the church and recently, but we're able to talk about this stuff. And I think and that's important. And not everyone is in that situation. And if you can find a way to find that common ground with the people you love, and that's where you got to get past the anger, because I think the anger is what ruins all that. And I think my wife and I were at a spot where it was consuming me, and I really could have ruined our marriage if we did not communicate. And
is there something that you can point to that you think helped you? Maybe you just said it, but just to be clear, that helped you past that anger stage? Was there?
I think it was when I realized I was going through the stages of grief again. Like, I realized the symptom what was causing it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I didn't, but I think I had, but it's like you have to go through that anger though. You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I listened to the Liturgist podcast, which you've been on, and Michael Gungor talks a lot about. He talks about it as a deconstruction, and that helped. That processing it that way too. It's like you're not just going to abandon everything. Like, if you abandon everything, you're all alone. Like, if you deconstruct or break something down, then you're going to want to rebuild it. So that's when I started thinking of it in those terms of, I'm not abandoning my faith. I'm not abandoning my worldview. I'm breaking it down, starting from the beginning. And that's always you demolish a building. The hardest part is clearing everything away to start the building again. But once I started thinking of it in those terms, but this is just a building that's probably never going to be finished. And, you know, I remember my wife almost putting like a timeline on it, and that wasn't good. And
right.
But once I started reading more things, and her and I talking about more things, and me realizing that this is just my life journey. Like,
right.
I'm never gonna get to know it all, but if I embrace it and move forward and enjoy it, like enjoy the journey, enjoy learning new stuff, enjoy conversations, and now I only get angry at like the friggin' at the current administration as of late. I get angry when people are repressed, right? Like that's when my anger gets stirred now, and I think that's a positive anger.
Yeah, well, I get angry sometimes too, and I think that it's good. Also, sometimes I realize that it's a response to despair.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realize that it's despair, I find myself not having to express the anger in the same way when I realize like, oh, you're desperately sad about this thing happening, and the way that you're realizing to communicate it is in your anger, and you should be angry about it. But that when I realize that it's despair, it's easier for me to communicate all of it, rather than just sort of like the popping off kind of like angry part of it. And I learned that from that, what do you do with the mad that you feel? There's that Fred Rogers, testifying before the Congress or the Senate, in 1967, I think. He's basically arguing for why they should grant PBS this big bond or this big amount of money. And it's amazing.
Could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important?
Yes.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that the children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children, doing puppets in very personal communication with small groups. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
He hints at a bunch of that stuff, but yeah, despair, over, I mean, just disappointment over how people actually are,
Right. Yeah.
This year has been such a harsh toke in that way. Like, really, you're that mean and you're that sort of callous to the needs of children. I mean, there just feels like
it drives me crazy. And that's the thing. Like, my wife had to be like, "Look, we can't talk about Trump anymore. We just can't, because that's going to stir up my my rage." But I mean, that's the thing. Like, here, why am I defending common decency?
Yeah, I know.
Like, that's where I almost can't even comprehend it.
Well, and hopefully this is I mean, it revealed, it's good in a sense, because it reveals what's actually been there the whole time. It's just all sort of bubbled up to the surface now. And then now we can sort of deal with it. But it's taken me a second to get past the grieving about it. I think I'm still in that phase.
Yeah.
I just really am grieving what we actually are. I knew we were something was rotten, but I didn't know to what degree, just how rotten this population of people has gotten, you know.
I'm hoping, this is the optimist in me, you know, I'm hoping it comes to a head.
I think it is.
And I feel like it is too. And the fruit of their labor, you know, we start seeing that, the spoiled fruit that it is. And I was just like, I mean, I want to defend common decency. I want to, you know, that's it. And if that's putting me, you know, on the wrong side of history, then I guess, you know, in their view, you know, I guess that's where I am. But I refuse to believe that. I refuse that if you're standing up for people, but that's where I come back around to Jesus, right? That's like the message of Jesus has been completely lost on the modern evangelical Christian, like completely. And that's what I keep going back to.
Read or to avoid the Good Samaritan and to avoid, you know, if you've done it for the least of these, or trying to spin those verses to mean something, then we all know that they've meant our entire lives. It starts to get absurd. Like now it's like a farce. It's like a dystopian farce. But you know, there are developments, you know. So this thing is, I think that that guy is too stupid to survive. And I think enough people are seeing it where there's going to be able to be some resolution to this thing, but we still have to deal with the fact that all of this sentiment came to the surface, and that you still have the Fox Newses and the Rush Limbaughs of the world who are really intent on sowing this kind of chaos again. But the good news is that Rush Limbaugh is going to die very soon.
Well, that's what I keep thinking too. Like these guys, I mean, you know,
and the boomers are all going to die in the next 25 years. More, you know, the majority of them are going to be gone, and that's my aunts and uncles, and you know, my mom and dad, and I'm going to miss them dearly. But man, I really think that there's just a lot of this rotten thinking is sort of focused in that age group for some unknown or knowable, but I don't want to get into it reason. And
that's a whole other podcast episode.
But so those are positive things that, you know, but it's a long time to wait. And what kind of damage is going to be done in the meantime? It's troubling. But for me, what I feel like is that I feel like I'm getting close to being done with some major portion of the grieving process over what has sort of come to light and what has really hit home about who we are as a country. And once I feel like for me that process is done, then I can sort of get on with it a bit. And you know, maybe people, if anybody who's listening to this follows me on Twitter, that's, you know, the form that takes is I just have been a little quieter on there the last little bit. 'Cause you just don't know what to say. Like you want to go on there and just say, fucking told you so. And it's also salacious, and you don't want to, I don't know. So you know, now that we're talking about this thing, that I feel like there's a grieving process there too, that a lot of us who are paying attention to certain things are going through, and maybe people have already gone through it and have moved on. I really feel like I'm still in it, and I'm, to the degree that I've realized that recently, it's like, okay, then do it, focus on it, and let that be what it is, because you need to really turn the corner, you know, and be able to offer something besides just gloom and doom.
Well, I mean, your music really has it has helped a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people I talk to speak very highly of you and your music through their their, deconstruction or whatever it is. And
that's
I think
so cool.
that's really cool, man. Like it shows that something's there, and there's a purpose for all the doom and gloom, right?
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to suggest that everything I've done is only doom and gloom, but just recently I don't have that. But I also believe that, I'm not going to apologize for the tone also of, like, it's taken me a long time to realize that, because, for years you get people saying, like, why can't you write a happy song, man? And I think, I don't know, why can't I write a happy song? But I'm also not going to try to twist myself up into knots to be something that I'm not. And so I am glad that it's been earnest, and it's been not motivated by seeking glory or whatever. You know what I mean? There's like and so so I'm glad that it's landed with some people, that so many humans have done their best work under those same sort of conditions, total earnestness, and doing it for pretty rad reasons, and they don't get an audience. They don't feel less alone because it's not transmitted. And so I'm really grateful to be one of the ones who lucked out, and my shit is being transmitted to people, and I'm glad that it's helped some folks. But I don't, and I hope that a lot of the other hidden work of, people who are got their finger on it even more than I do, sees the light of day more and more, and that thoughtful work of all kinds rises to the top, or to the surface enough for people to hear it and to connect with it. But I'm grateful to be one of those people who are, for better or worse, trying to do thoughtful shit.
I think earnestness and honesty goes a long way, and no matter what you're doing, right? No matter what job you're in, whatever you do for a living, I think earnestness and honesty will get you places.
Yeah, plus competency.
Yeah, that too. But I think that goes a lot farther and makes more of an impact. I mean, it's funny. One of my friends on Facebook here, I let people know I was talking to you, and if anyone had any questions, he's from Florida, and he said, you took him to a Steak and Shake after a show.
Yeah.
So
I've done that.
That's fantastic.
Those are fun nights, man. The after show Steak and Shake. That usually means you're still riding pretty high on the night. That's fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time and like I said, being so generous. I didn't mean for it to go this long, and I just really appreciate you talking to me about all this, and I really do wish you all the best.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for listening to this podcast. It's been a lot of fun bringing this series, Processing Belief Through Music, to all of you. It's just been wonderful to be able to talk to these insanely talented musicians, TW Walsh, Derek Webb, and David Bazan. You can find all their music. There should be links in all the show notes for these past 3 episodes. For David Bazan, you can check out his music over at davidbazan.com. His album is released through Undertow Records. You can check out Undertow Records as well. His albums are over at undertowstore.com. And also keep an eye out for TW Walsh and David Bazan's side project, Low Tom. It's out July 14th, and it is fantastic. Highly recommended. Please grab that album, pre-order it, make sure you listen to it. You're not going to regret it.
When you couldn't
our social media links. You can go over to the AxPx.com. Please, if you like what we're doing here and you want to support the show, I highly recommend you check out our Patreon, patreon.com/theAxPx. I do a weekly podcast kind of parsing my journey. It's called the AxPx Diaries, and it's something for me to get my feelings out there and hopefully start some dialogue with you. If you're someone who has just started to deconstruct or just started to kind of doubt your worldview, your that's been set in through how you were raised or your community, I started this podcast as kind of a safe place to discuss all this stuff. And my whole goal was to try to create some sort of community that's safe to challenge, safe to ask questions. And if you're someone who is needing someone to talk to, needing some sense of community, please drop me a line. My email is sean@theaxpx.com. You can go to theaxpx.com, click on the contact link. You can drop me a note right there. I'm also available on Twitter @theaxpx. And if you're just needing to just talk some things out, please feel free to call the voicemail line. Sometimes it's better just to kind of talk some shit out. So 951-723-5586 is the voicemail line. Again, that's 951-723-5586. If you're needing someone to talk to, someone just to listen, please leave a voicemail. Even if you don't want to leave everything right there, just leave a quick voicemail, leave your number. I would be happy to call you and talk to you. Because that's what it's really all about when we're in our seasons of our life where we're questioning a lot. Sometimes it helps, most of the time, all the time, it helps to find someone else, to have community with someone else, and to talk about things. And a lot of the times that's not available. So, like I said, the AxPx podcast, what I'm trying to do here is create some sort of safe space for everyone to be able to pursue truth wherever that takes them. And please drop me a line if you need someone to talk to. I'd be happy to talk. That's going to do it for this week's episode. I have so many great episodes on the way. I'm really excited about the future of this podcast. A lot of great conversations and topics to tackle. Probably going to take a couple weeks to kind of get the next few episodes in gear, and I will talk to all of you then. Bye.